there's a great story about Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls basketball player, about the guy who was his personal conditioning coach. This was back in a time when there's probably more strength and conditioning. That's more widespread than maybe the mental side of things. But the guy was just starting out, and he said he sent a letter to every player in the Chicago Bulls team, and he went, apart from Jordan, because she thought Jordan's not going to go for this. He's at the top. He doesn't need any help in this department. So he sent a letter. So I think he said Jordan was in the locker room, and he's sat there, and you can see this letter in the locker next to him. And he's going to the guy next to him, what's that? And he goes and he reads it, and he goes why is this guy not contacted me? So he rang that guy and said, I'll come over now. I'll give you an hour. Go over now. And he coached him for the next 10. And he was the only one of the Bulls that took him out. And you look at the squad, you think he doesn't need it. Yeah, it was weird. It was one of those. Yeah, I was a massive Man U fan, so I was a Brian Robson fan. So I used to emulate him in my back garden and pretended my back garden was Old Trafford. So when you're talking about Die Hard, I was one of them. When they lost, I'd be crying, and
really?
The week had gone. So it was weird. You think so it was always my dream to sign for Man U, and the opportunity finally comes. And it was a bit of an anticlimax.
I was going to say, it was an anticlimax.
I think a lot of stuff in life, you build stuff up and then you get there and you're like, what next? Because you're once I get there, great. And then you're but life carries on, isn't it? But what happened as well is that I think I supported them so much. I put the players on such a pedestal. It was like gods. And then when I was there full time from 16 to 20, you saw the good and the bad side, and then it completely went. And I don't really support them anymore now. It's weird how I can go from
yes,
So I still follow football, but if you told me at that age that there'd be a moment in my life where I'd
they do say never meet your heroes, though, don't they?
Yeah, it was weird. Even back then, I was always a bit I was always respectful of people's achievements in terms of, obviously you're aspiring to the achievements of the people, but I was always a bit I was always about the person as well. So sometimes I'd be you're a bit of a dick, a couple of the guys. But always the people who stood out to me were the guys who treated you exactly the same as the people in the first team dressing room. The first person that came to mind was Teddy Sheringham was there, and he was the kind of guy that he'd talk to you at your level. And I think what you had in United was when you were within the confines of the club, it's probably the biggest club in the world at the time. Maybe Barcelona, Real Madrid competing. Didn't feel like that within the club. It felt like you were in the Sunday League team because it was just we were at the Cliff training ground, which was quite small. It was quite it wasn't very decadent. And it comes from Fergie. Fergie used to, when you talk about attention to detail in life, I'd walk past him in the corridor and you think he's probably got 101 million things running through his head. He'd take his time just to ask how you were. Not even that, he'd ask how your parents were and he'd know their names. And this is me at 16, 17. So his attention to detail was, I think that's what probably separates the best managers in football, is that ability to look beyond themselves a little bit.
I think that goes a long way. It's interesting, just that little thing of remembering your family's names and actually, having a bit of sincerity. What you're saying, that goes a long way, doesn't it? Because as a friend of mine talks about it, he has a friend who rings him all the time and never ever asks who his family is.
Yeah.
Always straight away, how are you? And then it's into his problems, but doesn't ever say, well, how are you and how are your family? Some people just kind of forget about that, don't they?
Well, it's amazing. You know, you look at someone like Jurgen Klopp now, and I don't have to be inside the
king.
but like I heard an interview with him. It was a German interview, and the woman's asking him questions about when you sign a player, do you talk about the tactics, how you fit into the team? And you could see, like, she was a long-winded question. You could see Klopp was looking a bit strange, and he went, "No, I just talk about them as a person, about the family, what you know. But I just find out about the person." And I can imagine from the outside, he's a kind of manager that you take a bollocking from him because you know there's the other side. You know he's bollocking because he cares about you, rather than a bollocking you made him look bad. And I think, you know, that's a good kind of example to leaders, in terms of, like, the more you can look beyond yourself, but take yourself out of being the most important thing. It's that's what I find. I mean, the best managers I came across were those who felt like cared for you, and I think who are honest with you as well, because I think you'll find a lot of managers and a lot of coaches aren't honest with players, and you hear time and time again players say the one thing they appreciate from managers, it's not always saying exactly what you want to hear, but it's someone to be honest. And but people sometimes want to avoid those difficult moments of explaining why you're not in the team, and avoid having conversations. And I think the more you can kind of front up and have, it's easy to front up at life and have the easy conversations, but it's those other moments, isn't it? It's how you treat. That's one thing about Ferguson. He'd come in to the canteen. He talked to the people who were preparing food, the local women from Salford. He talked to them exactly the same as he would to the players. He'd make them feel sky high. And I think that's a lot in life. Like, people don't forget the way you make them feel, I think.
You said something there about at a younger age, you looked up to people and stuff like that. I don't disagree to a point of going, when you're talking about football now, and Fergie, growing up west of Ireland, you were either Liverpool or Man United, and it was just a flick of a coin, who you picked. And my neighbour picked United, I picked Liverpool, and we're next door to each other, this far away. And there was a hatred from my side for Fergie. Yeah. And there was an absolute horrible hatred. And that was only manifested by United doing well. There was nothing, I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know his personality. I just hated him because of who he looked after and managed in the football team. But he didn't manage the football team. He managed the individuals. And he managed them a bit like a CEO would in a company or anything like that. And he managed them correctly, and he was probably one of the best at doing that at the time. And the newer managers would probably come in and they have to know their tactics, but more and more now they're probably following his book of managing the individuals and getting so putting the best individual, or not the best individuals, but managing each individual and manage them as a team, as a collective, rather than just all buy this superstar and try and work it around him. But as you get older, and now he's retired and all that, you kind of look back, even though I still don't like United, and the amount of respect you have for the man, for how he's managed multiple groups of egotistical, well-paid individuals who all worked for him, doing exactly as he said all of the time. The man was a genius, basically.
Yeah, you have to handle some people differently. Or, you hear stories about how he just let Cantona get on with it because he knew he was an enigma. He was kind of like, if he started to... And I think as players, you can kind of accept it to a degree, I think. I know people say it depends if the player's performing on the pitch, but he might have let Cantona get on with it, but he would have treated that other individual like they'd want to be treated. So it wouldn't be a case of it'd be a blanket for everyone else and Cantona different. Same with someone like Ronaldo, I guess. But then he did have his line drawn in the sand, and if he crossed it, Roy Keane, Yap Sam, a lot of players are kind of he wasn't scared to make those big decisions as well. It's because I suppose you can care for the individual. I suppose you have to realise there is a divide as well, and you have to be able to make those big decisions in life.
And that's separated him as a coach, manager, however you want to kind of put it.
I tell you a great example of how he's I signed for Man U when I was 14. Okay, so you signed school, but I'm 14 now. So the chances, so I'm not even like a signed, 16. So this is 14-year-old signing. So went to Old Trafford at the day of a game now, and you were led by my scout and the youth development officer to you just led around the labyrinth corridors of Old Trafford, and I didn't know where I was going. And then you knock on the door, and then you hear this familiar voice going, "Oh, come in." So I was signing with him on the morning of a game now. So I think they were playing Tottenham that afternoon. He took that time out on the morning of it. Like you think, just taking your time out on just any old morning, but on the morning of a game, and he did that for everyone. He did it for everyone.
There was never an issue anyway, so he didn't care. He knew it was one anyway.
I remember there's always I think his team talk when he used to play Tottenham was all he'd go into the change room, go, "It's only Spurs." I think Gary Neville said that. He said this is Spurs, and that was it, because
we better welcome Rhodri.
yeah.
I'll continue on chatting about football for the next hour and a half.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, you too. Thanks for coming along, mate. It's good to see you. How's things generally?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I'm just busy. I'm doing this coaching service I've set up, so it's working with it's kind of got a mind angle to it, but it's working with curious high achievers really. So it's kind of working with athletes, CEOs, managers, mixture of people. Like people say, like, "Oh, with your sporting background, why don't you just work with athletes?" I'm like, because I'm really curious. I like exploring different,
exactly.
And I think people's minds generally work the same. So it's like what you tend to have is like the drive that athletes have got. Usually, you've seen business leaders and CEOs. There is a similar kind of mentality.
Yeah,
I find, and that mentality isn't for everyone. That's not good or bad. It's just everyone's wired a bit differently. So I've probably come from that side where I can kind of meet people there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and I've always kind of thought, I think you could probably take some high-performing executives, and if you threw them into some sort of sporting arena when they were younger and really pushed them to it, they would have achieved as well.
Yeah. It's just that discipline and that drive and the intrinsic motivation of not having to be told to do something. It's just like naturally setting yourself goals, or naturally curious, to be honest. And I think the danger is with the curious types is just like channeling the focus, because you want to try so many different things. And I want to go at that, I want to go at this. And I think it's just basically what I'd say in a nutshell is like I'm a bouncing board to bounce ideas off, but maybe I'll just highlight, because I think sometimes everyone has blind spots, right, in life. 100%. And sometimes when you're talking to someone, you look at language you use, and what I tend to find in Wales is like it's this usually is this belief about people do believe in themselves deep down, but they kind of have to apologize in terms of like they have to say like, I'm not being arrogant, but I'm not being cocky, but I feel like I've got this. And you're like, whoa, that's not being cocky. Like for me, like have that belief in yourself, and it's just like there's so many voices around you, so it's like having to excuse yourself for believing in yourself. I think there's a difference between someone who is cocky and they're using it as a mask to hide insecurity, and they're using the cockiness to make themselves appear superior to people around them. But why not have that? I was saying to someone last week, that humble cockiness, that kind of like, yeah, you know what, why not me? Why not me?
Yeah. I think that's the problem. I think things like arrogance and that, I think, can sometimes be misinterpreted for actually confidence.
Yeah.
And your confidence in your own ability. But we are terrible, especially in this country, I think, generally, at Wales more so than anything, of being scared to express ourselves. Like the Americans are not.
Yeah.
The Americans don't care, do they? Do you know what I mean? They put themselves out there. And
well, but that's why, like, in the industry, like a lot of the top, Steve Jobs had a coach. Like you have a lot of the people that they see the benefits of having. So even if they're operating all right, like people say like, how are you doing? Things are going okay. It's like, what? Like, can we tilt that up even a bit more? Or just have that deeper understanding of. So that's why, like, the people I tend to work with are the people that on paper, like, they don't need to be coached, but they're like, Do you know what I mean? It's a weird. It's that bit. Like
Yeah.
I was speaking to someone the other day, and he was like, and he had had mentorship before, and yeah, but I'm curious to explore this. And then you have a chat, and because no one wants to be coached. No one, if you said to someone, "Do you want to be coached?" Like, of course not. But like sometimes you just have a chat with someone, and they're like, oh, I've got the value, and the difference I'd say, like, you know, coaching as opposed to something more like therapeutic is more about recovery, and coaching is more about discovery. So I've got to be clear about where my boundaries are sometimes. If you feel like, so I tell people beforehand, these are the differences. Is this something that you want to do? Because I think it's just, you know, I think it will come more popular here. And I think what you tend to have is a lot of like therapists are turning to coaching, because I think there's less of a stigma around, because you might coach someone, and then you might, like, there's a bit of an overlap with therapy, because you know, everyone's carrying little minor traumatic experience through life, but the difference is like, you know, if you've got a extreme traumatic experience or severe trauma or addiction, or it's knowing where the boundaries lie. But I think what you tend to have is like curious high achievers are leaning into their edges a bit more, so there's more voice in the head, and especially I think where you've got like a lot of you know, leaders are used to people around them agreeing with them and saying yes and not challenging them. Sometimes I feel like, you know, it's that compassionate challenging. It's challenging knowing that anything we discuss is like, there's no judgment. It's just like exploring different way to be, I guess.
When we were born, we know nothing, so it's a constant state of learning. You know, a child's mentality of soaking up everything.
Yeah.
And you get to a certain age in life where, you know, be it in your teens, you know everything, and you kind of be brought down a peg or two again. But from what you're saying, those successful entrepreneurs, C-suites, managers, whatever it may be, kind of grasp the understanding that they're good at certain things, but a bit like, let's use the analogy of a footballer, and let's use that man we don't like that wears a number 7 with a red jersey at the moment, that he probably has been the best in the world for many, many years. But he doesn't do it all on his own. He has a dietitian, a nutritionist, probably a physio, someone who coaches,
a sports psychologist, everything.
Yeah, so that he knows he can get better and better and better with a good team around him. But knows he needs coaching to a degree, mentor, whatever it may be. Whereas, you know, some people that think they know it all and are not successful, let's say in the business world, think they can do it all themselves, and if they can't, they delegate it in the incorrect manner and just stagnate or go backwards. Right? Where you were saying, I think the highly successful ones almost mirror what a sporting person would do, and kind of get the right team around and get help and assistance whenever they need it.
There's a great story about Michael Jordan, you know, the Chicago Bulls basketball player, about the guy who's his personal conditioning coach. So this was back in a time when you know, there's probably more strength and conditioning. That's more widespread than maybe the mental side of things. But like the guy was just starting out, and he said he sent a letter to every player in the Chicago Bulls team, and he went, apart from Jordan, because she thought, Jordan's not going to go for this. Like, he's at the top. Like, he doesn't need any help in this department. So he sent a letter. So I think he said, like, Jordan was in the locker room, and he's like sat there, and he can see this letter in the locker next to him, and he's going to the guy next to him, what's that? And he goes, and he reads it, and he goes, like, why has this guy not contacted me? So he rang that guy and said, I'll come over now. I'll give you an hour. Go over now. And he coached him for the next 10, 15, and he was the only one of the Bulls that took him up. You know, and you look at the squad and you think he doesn't need it. But that's the difference, isn't it? It's the same as, like, you know, I know he's had a lot of criticism recently, but Djokovic is like he's even got a spiritual coach. And he said to start off with him, he was the spiritual coach more, because I do think, you know, there's a balance to be had between that spiritual side and psychology in sport. But he did it initially for his tennis, but then he was like, yeah, no, this feels a little bit limited to tennis. I'm taking that approach to life. And then people are like, oh, well, once you turn inwards, you're going to lose your drive. But this is before, where, you know, I don't know, he won like 3 Grand Slams on the trot. So I think it's that. I think you probably got it in business, where you got someone like Richard Branson has just got this genuine, just never think that they're done. They're always learning. And I know, and the personals, love him or loathe him. And someone like Tony Robbins in the personal self-help game, like America, and he's like, you see him on stage, he's got this energy. He's 61. He's been doing it for 45 years. And I listened to him on a podcast the other day, and he's still curious.
His energy is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Have you seen that Netflix one where before he goes on stage, what he does?
Date with Destiny. Yeah.
Where he's bouncing on the mini trampoline just to get his heart rate up for when he goes on stage, because he kind of brings the energy. But like that is phenomenal for how long he's been doing that, and like how he manages to hold that level of energy as well.
Well,
the calories he burns.
Yeah, I heard him on a podcast. Said like, I mean, obviously, I haven't got basically the amount of calories he's burning off. So he was like, well, I've got to be at top of my game, and so he's exploring all kinds of like stem cell stuff, like all kinds of stuff, because he's, you think like 61, like he doesn't need the money as such, but he said the difference is like he has successful people, contact him to people who've hit the wall because they're looking success in the wrong area. He says it's about fulfillment. It's a deeper thing. It's a fulfillment. It's the deeper meaning. So I think he even says himself, like, to start off with, is all about like changing the world and stuff, but it's more about self-actualization himself. And I think if it's like what I think Gandhi said once, is like, be the change you want to be. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, why is not the world changing to me? And I'm like, why should it change for you?
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. I know you said you signed for Man United when you were 14, didn't you? So let's go back to the beginning then. And let's tell us about your journey to where you are today, I guess.
Yeah, the journey's been a bit of a mixture, because I was like that driven kind of kid, quite obsessive, bit of a perfectionist, and I was really hard on myself. I always say to people, like, that can drive you like really, really far, but it's like the way I describe it is like, when you run and you can put those parachutes around your back, you think you're running, like you've got this drive, but you've got this parachute pulling you back as well, and you think, oh, this parachute is giving me the drive. And I'm like, well, what if you start taking the parachute off? You're not going to lose that drive. You're just going to go a little bit, it's going to feel a little bit easier. But yeah, I was one of those, I was at Man U for a period. The problem I had is I'd wrapped up so much of my identity in football. I remember my first school report when I was 5, the teacher put good luck with the football when I was 5. And I slowly Rhodri the footballer. It was always Rhodri, the footballer, and then when United, Rhodri plays for Man United. But then, I'd probably had like a bit of a, I come from a middle class background. I don't come from like a broken childhood or anything. Like, my mum and dad got divorced, but that, that's probably the only kind of trials I had to really face. So my rise was pretty, I was used to just having praise all the time, and it was just like, but then what slowly starts happening is like, you're looking for the praise for your self-esteem a little bit. It's like, slowly you're kind of looking in the wrong area. I think this is why you have a lot with sports athletes, is I think it's a kind of nature. I think if you're obsessional, perfectionist, and you're hard on yourself, that attracts a lot of people to sport, because you've got like this exam, like this test all the time, and you've got like this outlet all the time. And for me, like, football kind of picked me really. Once I started playing, it was like I had no choice, to be honest with you. But what happened with me when I was at United, I started having bad injuries, like bad knee injuries, and then suddenly you're kind of like, there's a difference between having injuries when you're like halfway up the mountain, but when you're at the bottom, like you start getting severe knee injuries, statistically the chances of succeeding are quite low. So yeah, my knee kind of deteriorated, and I ended up having to retire in my early 20s. And the knee consultant said, you've got a 50-year-old ex-footballer at 20. You've got a knee of a 50-year-old ex-footballer at 24. But like typical guy, I didn't like deal with it emotionally. I think I just went out to buy a guitar and thought, right, I'm just going to play the guitar. And I was just scratching around, trying to find something that can never fill that void, to be honest. It was such a love. But then, worked my way into television, doing documentaries and drama directing and stuff. So I think what the football side brought me was the ability just to look at something and go, I'm going to give it a go, you know, like rather than like placing so many limitations that don't even exist, you know. I mean, is it different if I just said, oh, I want to give it a go with being a doctor? You know, you've got to, that's going to be a long old road. But TV, you know, in theory, you don't need any qualifications as such. It's just more about just your ability just to deal with people, I guess.
And communicating.
Yeah, so that's what I've kind of been doing for the last 15 years. But I've always had like an interest in the mind and psychology and the spiritual side, philosophy and stuff. But I kind of parked it a little bit. I think, you know, when I was younger, I was always intrigued about this fight and like, why have I got such a harsh voice in my head? What is that voice? And like, what? And that moments then when the voice is quiet and you have those moments where like you just feel at ease and stuff. I think the closest I can describe to is like sometimes when I play, I feel like you're in, when you go in the zone a little bit, it felt like just the performance is coming through you. It's a weird situation where like, you know, I'd come off the pitch and have cuts on my leg and I'd have no memory how I got the cut. It's just like the sense of time just goes. So I was always a bit curious about like what is that like feeling, just peace and just you're not thinking as much as just. And I mean, I work with a lot of athletes now, and it's like, yeah, I'm like, how's it working out when you're thinking your way through a game? And like, yeah, it just never goes well. But I think people don't really know different way to be honest.
Are they on autopilot then, to a degree that they've learned something and their behaviour now instinctive? You know, you talk about that with football, you know, he's in the right place at the right time. Is that just an instinctive or a behavioural thing of going, how did that happen? I don't know. I go through.
I think that is the. Everyone talks about this zone thing, about like how do you get in the zone, and I think for me it's more, rather than it's simplifying stuff. The more you kind of add in, like you got to do all these, like it's sometimes just like it's looking at the things that are pulling you out of, like a lot of people. You'll get it all. You'd be surprised how many people they'll do mistakes, and then they're thinking about that mistake 5 minutes later they do another mistake, and people and I think people think like the people who achieve the top of their athletic, you know, positions, like someone like Djokovic, for instance, like you think, oh yeah, he's just reached some state where he's like doesn't have any negative thoughts, but he said no, it's the complete opposite. It's just like making peace with those negative thoughts during it. Rafael Nadal, like he's got a really intricate superstition when he in between, like he's got like, he does all kinds of rituals, and I thought it's just like a superstition. And then I heard him in an interview, he said like, no, it's because when I'm playing, I've got that voice goes, are you going to lose? Are you blah, blah, blah. He just wants to, he doesn't want to give it any fuel. But and then he says, and on the other side, it's that same voice goes, are you going to win? Are you going to go on? And you're thinking about lifting the cup and how your family going to be, and he's just like, he doesn't want to engage in that. So it's like trying to be present and just engaged in what's happening in front of you, really.
So I think Steve Smith's like that, the cricketer as well, isn't he? Because he has some strange rituals as well, like when he's at the batting crease and stuff like that, which kind of like he tweaks stuff and like flicks stuff and goodness knows what. And I think it's the same. Yeah,
especially when you're like batting in cricket or playing golf, you've got more time, haven't you? So I think that's why, like in golf, you know, the mental side of the thing is
it's huge, isn't it?
It's huge. But I think even with that, it's like, for me, it's like, simpler the better. The more I find, like the more understanding people have got of the mind, it automatically gives them a space, and then you can see, oh yeah, that's the fear, and what I was trying to keep me safe, this fearful voice, and it's rampant. It's, you know, it's just going to ramp up the day before a game, on the morning before a game. Oh God, like, you know, you're trying to work out how it's going to go, you know, and it's just trying to be like present through those moments, and letting the performance come through you really in life, because we like most times in my life, you know, when you trip yourself up, it's like it's purely in your own mind a lot of the time.
Yeah, but we're saying it's not like I say, it's not just in sport and anything like that. I think we do it ourselves, don't we? We overthink what we're doing.
Yeah, there's a quote, I think it's like author Mark Twain. He said, "Terrible things have happened in my life, most of which never did."
Yeah, exactly that. Because it's what you concoct in your mind, don't you? Because naturally as a human, we overthink it, don't you? And we've got to try and control that overthinking. And I always come back to this, and I said this in the last podcast, is that you can only control what you can control the controllables. You know what I mean? I can't control if it's raining outside. What I can control is where I live.
Yeah.
So if I'm really fed up of it, go and find a climate which only has like a 10% chance of rain. Do you know what I mean?
But it's crazy, you know. Like I used to read a lot of books in ancient philosophy, like Stoicism, for instance. You know, and I was reading these books. You know, it's like, yeah, obviously we're not going to war against the Carpathians. So you know, it's like, you know, the culture's changed, but human nature hasn't changed at all, and they're all it's the same. You know, control what you can control, and even to the point where you kind of you can get caught up in your own story a lot sometimes, and I think that's sometimes why I think a lot of people, when they find meaning beyond themselves, a greater meaning about, so you know, like, so rather than what can I get out of this relationship with someone, how can I serve this person, and because I think at the times in my life where I thought, right, I'm going to work this out, what can I get out of life, I feel like, you know, you get caught in your head a little bit, and you're a little bit like, you're not really totally engaged. And I think the moments where you kind of like take the blinkers off a little bit and just try and be of service. And don't get me, like, people talk about like ego's bad. I'm like, it all depends how you harness it, really. You know, it's like you have to have an ego to operate in the world, but it's just like looking at the bigger picture, I guess, isn't it?
You mentioned there about being present, and there was a podcast some weeks ago, and they were chatting to Richie McCaw, the New Zealander, and it was very evident, you know, they're saying, how do you constantly remain there? And it was something there he said that when he committed a foul, he had to park it and be present, not start thinking in his mind, oh shit, what have I done, how have I caused that, how is that going to affect the team? Because if he lets that get into his mindset and not be present at the next stage in the game, there's going to be some. It didn't call it a double foul, but it was something along those lines. I'm going to double the amount of pain that I put my team through. So it's happened, get it, leave it there, and let's just get on with everything else.
I think once you're in that emotional circuit and your brain starts, oh God, like, you've let everyone down. And once you start looping that, you're basically not thinking straight. You're thinking, you know, your calm, measured, rational part of you is offline. So, I think what happens sometimes, people are in that state and they try and battle their mind. I'm like, sometimes in those moments, you just have to. That's why I let people go to your breath. You know, a lot in Japanese times in martial arts, they use like what is called like a centering practice. So their psychological core they saw as their belly. So you'd have samurai warriors. It's like what they say, like a no mind thing. So like they know the mind's going to be busy, so they take the focus away from there. So rather than like stay in the head, and people like, that's what they say, people that are compounding their mistakes. It's just like, this mistake's happened. Yeah, the voice is going to go, like, people go, no, how do I quiet my mind? I'm like, but at those moments, you know, you have to take your focus away from the mind. So it's like no mind a little bit, and then you let it die down. So whatever that is, it's just taking it. You know, it can be something you just focus your attention on your toe or something, and you just like, and something like that, or just something in the crowd, something that takes you out of there, because, you know. But what a lot of people, like, they're battling their thoughts, and then suddenly they're in a loop. So it's like letting that loop play out. You know, it's gonna, you know, when you're angry, it's like they say it's like a 90-second rule. It's like a 90-second rule for it to, you know, for an emotion to run its circuit. But what people tend to do is like they add to it. They had, and then, but people could do that for years. People will do that for a lifetime. Something will happen, and they're playing that loop.
Are you even talking about, you know, doing things on emotion where you shouldn't have, you know, if you've had a fight with a family member or something, and, you know, bang, something pops up on Amazon going, there's 20% off, and you go, I'm buying something on emotion. I don't actually know, but my head is all in a mess that I actually don't know what I'm doing.
Well, that's why I say sleep on it, isn't it? Yeah. Because you sleep on it, and suddenly, oh God, it's the same as like sometimes, you know, you're like you have an argument with a missus, and you go, oh, I've got to get my point, you know, and I'm
never.
like, and never, I've never seen two people with that energy, all both coming from this emotional energy, and it usually spirals, and someone says something they don't really mean, and they escalate it. So it's like you have to bring a different energy, and it's either the more I think the more you can kind of look at your mind, and you can kind of bring it to you can reset it quicker, then you kind of like, and I still have moments where I lose it with my kids, but I can bring it back far quick. I'm not there 2 days later, just like. And then, honestly, if you're there 2 days later, you're suffering yourself. Like you know, it's not serving. It's the same as like if someone cuts you up in traffic. Don't get me wrong, it's initial reaction like, what you're doing, but like, well, what story are you going to tell yourself there? Like, are you going to go down that route of letting it affect you for the rest of the morning? Someone go, they'll go to work and go, you never guessed this guy, and then.
But a lot of people
like,
do.
Yeah,
and it manifests itself, and it's like a boil, and it gets bigger and bigger. But you almost sound like you're talking about, you know, resetting minds and parking things and stuff like that. Almost, you know, if you're going to bed at night and you're a worrier or things are playing on your mind, of, you know, simply take a book and write that issue of the day down. Close it and kind of go, I don't deal with that when it's dark outside, and almost try and train the mind, going, I will deal with it in the morning when my mind is a lot clearer. I'm tired now. I could be emotional. It's dark outside. I don't want to have that going through my head. Write it down. Deal with the park. It's
it's the ability to be curious with self and, you know, look at yourself like, oh yeah, this is what's going on here. All right. Rather than people go, no, what my belief here? I'm totally true, totally correct.
Yeah.
Well, what about if you took the different perspective? Could you be incorrect here? Could it, you know, it's like putting yourself in the shoes of the other person. How does it look from there? And because you know how it is, you get an argument. Yeah, I'm completely correct, and then you wake up in the morning and think, maybe I was right. I did it last night with my wife. I woke up this morning, but there's always a chance to. You know, the more you can. That's what I'm saying. The more
you want to apologise to her now.
You know what? Yeah, I woke up this morning and went, I was wrong last night. I'm sorry. But that's what I'm saying. It's not about, like, say people work with me, like, it's not about being perfect, but it's like, we're human, aren't we? We're human. We're not like as rational as we like to think we always are. So, but it's like knowing that there's always a way to, like I say, but I think a lot of people are so fused to it and they believe everything. What I did for a period was like, when my thought, you know, sometimes your thoughts and you're in social, you know, you're out and about, and you're just like, the first thing I say is just watch how much your mind just chats shit a lot of the time. Like, it adds stuff to situations. That person, did he look hard at me? Oh yeah, people do look. Oh, what have I done? And blah blah blah. And then suddenly you're spiraling stories about. So sometimes I'm like, is it true? If someone was objectively looking at you in different situations, what's true about the situation? See how much your mind adds to it, and then suddenly it's like. And I do this sometimes with coaches, like, you know, you'll have someone like who's looking through a filter of like, I'm not enough or whatever, right? So, they've got like 4 great contracts in a row. Yeah, it's a fluke, yeah. I didn't get that one. Oh, bam. There you go. That's a confirmation I'm not good enough. I'm like, well, in a court of law, you know, we took that, I was like, yeah, but you got look at it evidentially sometimes. It's very difficult to do that with yourself because people have got their own blind spots and you know, and the mind's got a general negative bias. So I would say, like, the negative bias. If mind's got general negative bias, it's not about, it's like, yeah, thinking positively, but it's like you have to bring a different energy to it. Otherwise, you know, it's...
Can I throw a story into this? Yeah. And I'm nearly sure my mother doesn't listen to all of these, so Mom, sorry in advance, right? If you do hear this, years ago when she came over to visit me originally, and we went on a bus going into town, and the first thing she kind of said, you said all the distractions in her mind, she went, I don't think this guy's going the right way. And I said, what do you mean, Ma'am? The bus driver? Yeah, he's not going the right way. I said, he's done this journey 6 times already today. You've never been on this journey before. She's like, but he's going the wrong way. I said, you need to park whatever's in your mind. And because that was kind of put aside, she started looking like this. That guy's looking funny at me. He's going to do something to me. And I go, Ma'am, we're on a bus. Obviously, we're going the wrong way, I said, because you know. But I said, what do you mean he's going to do something? Well, he's looking at me funny. You keep staring at him. And this is the conversation we're having. And it just kind of tweaked it, because that's nearly a dozen years ago, that sometimes people's brains can just get filled with all sorts of shit. Sorry, Ma'am, if you ever do listen to it.
And that's sometimes, like, people talk about letting go, and I'm like, no, letting go isn't giving up. But like, that's not what it is. It's like, letting go is like, well, how's this loop serving you? Like, you know, it's like, why you hold it? Like, and some people are holding on to it, and what's it benefiting you holding on to it? Because it benefits some people. It'd be like, they might look at life through the lens of like, I always mess up in big situations, and then they'll say, oh look, yeah, there's my confirmation. It's like some people live lives to prove beliefs that don't serve them rather than explore a different way. It's like prove themselves. Like, well, you proved yourself right. Well done you for proving what you think are your inadequacies. And I think that's why, like, that's what a good coach can bring, is just like to pull you up on some stuff. And it's like, well, you know, is that really true, or whatever it is? And but you know, like, I think what I was quite like fortunate is, like, one benefit, I was really hard on myself for so many years, like for over 30 years, like really hard, and then it was like just grinding me down, you know. So I think, like, I hit my, like, probably I'd say, like, waking up moments in 2017. It was like, what happens if you just be gentle with yourself, totally inflationally compassionate, I'm still demanding of myself, but like welcoming everything, rather than going like, oh, I'm going to control life so exactly how I want. I'll only be okay exactly when it's how I want it. I'm like, why should it be exactly how you want it? No, don't get me wrong. Like, I still, you know, you do what you can to influence things, but it's like doing what you can and then just letting it go a little bit. You know, it's like, but a lot of people are like, oh, I'll only be okay when. And I said, like, did you say that 5 years ago? Yeah, I probably said that 5 years ago. Are you okay now? No, because I'll be okay then. Because, like, we were quite bad at just predicting what future things will bring us. I'm like, what about if we work at, like, just being okay now? And if, like I said, if you lose your drive at any point, tell me. I'm like, yeah, my drive's just there, isn't it? But it's just like, it's just giving it a bit more, like I say, like running with a parachute behind your back. And you're kind of like, yeah, just take those off. And don't get me wrong, like, that's lifelong training, because, you know, whenever someone says, like, I've reached this end point or something, I'm like, it's like same as like physical fitness. You know, you don't say, oh, I'm done now. You know, it's like, and I think that's ultimately in life is this self-actualization. I think when you're younger, you're trying to develop like a healthy ego. You're trying to find your way in the world and my place in it. And I think as you get a little bit older, you're more like, yeah, it hasn't quite bought me just focusing just in this one area. Like, you know, we're probably conditioned a bit to look for stuff outside of us.
So do you bring that all into the, you know, the previous episodes and series? We've always talked about resilience and mental strength and stuff like that, and dealing with, you know, how do you cope with a bad day? Are you using those type of tactics to deal with, as you said earlier, we all have bad days or bad moments of dealing with it?
Yeah, I think it's human in it, but I think there's an awareness of thought. So, like, when you have thought, I'm like, I always say to people I work with, how you aware, there's an awareness of that thought, and that awareness is, that for me is natural resilience. Is like, there's a screen, a part of you in your mind that the thoughts are just happening and the feelings are going. I used to, what I used to do is, I used to imagine myself like,
Playing for Liverpool.
yeah.
That was my happy place.
Yeah, that was when I went down the rabbit hole and suffered for many years of down the loops. No, but what I used to do is, like, I'd imagine myself, like, it worked different for everyone. I'd like imagine myself, like people say, like, meditate and stuff. It's like just sitting doing nothing and just imagining, like, not getting caught up in thoughts. It's like imagining those. I used to imagine them as like me sat on the riverbank and thoughts and feelings are just like fish going past. It's like, what if you just sit back? Oh yeah, the thoughts are going to come and go. And some stuff in life, you know, let's say something happened to one of my children, God behold, like that's going to cause massive ruckus, but I'm not going to add any more to it than necessary. And I think I think it's a lot in life is
what do you mean by thinking?
Yeah, the stories are
consequences or what may happen.
What could have, like the energy of like I should have done this, I should have done that. The stories around it, like stuff happens, and like but not everything's gonna, you know, life can be challenging. I'm like, well, don't add to it by other stuff. That's unnecessary, I think, and that's for me, it's like life is a practice all the time, and you know, we are human, aren't we? And you know, I think sometimes in this space people say, like, yeah, 5 steps to a better you. I'm like, if it's that easy, you know, like everyone would be enlightened, everyone would be, you know, it's trial and error and just being your own kind of North Star a little bit, your own internal compass, but like not being hard on yourself. And I think, but a lot of people think, oh, if I'm not hard on myself, I won't get anything done. Now there is a moment, you know, like it's bringing, sometimes what I say is like, you know, when you're being really hard, it's bringing the female energy, that, you know, that arm, like I say to you, like if one of your friends was there just voicing out exactly what you were saying to yourself, to begin, you wouldn't go like, get on with it to begin. You probably go, that's all right, yeah, I'm wrong. But if you're still like that a year later, you'd probably be more of the masculine energy. You'd be more like, that's why sometimes with me, like I can respond really well to that really direct kind of like, like the Navy SEALs. Sometimes I'll listen to Navy SEALs, some of those days. And then other days like, yeah, no, it's just a gentler energy. It's just, I think it has its place. And everyone's different, aren't they? It's like, it's knowing what works for you, I guess, isn't it? Everyone's different.
Yeah, it is just knowing what makes you tick, isn't it? And but you're talking about that 5 steps to happiness and stuff like that. It's so everyone's after a quick fix, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think happiness is like a state that's fleeting. Like I said, like we said earlier, I think it's more fulfillment. It's more of a joy. It's a deeper thing that you're doing something that it's a whole body yes. And I think like everything in life, is like, not many people like 100% of what they do, but I think if it's like 80% and you put up with the 20%, like I don't like doing admin and stuff. I love working with people, but it's a problem is like when it starts shifting the other way and and the money is just the 20% and you hate 80% of what you do. And it's like, and the way I see it is like, as far as I know, we've got this one life, and it's just like, what I wouldn't ever want to do is get to the end of my life and go, what ifs? Because that's just wasted energy. And you've got the hindsight then of knowing it's more difficult when you're in heat of the moment to think. So sometimes it's not a morbid thing, but I'll sometimes think, right, if it's my eulogy or if I was at, what would matter? What like trying to like take myself into that place. Will this matter when I'm like? So it's just trying to focus your attention, because sometimes you can get caught up in stuff like your to-do list. You're like, half the stuff doesn't matter, and the stuff that really does matter, you're like palm into the back.
No, 100%. It's and I think that's just life, isn't it? I think that's the way we're all wired, aren't we? And I think a lot of that just comes from generally how social media portrays stuff, how life is portraying stuff, how we're taught in school and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think not to downgrade school, but I think they miss a trick with some things we talk about with money, but I think they also miss it around the mindset stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's something they need to work on now.
I agree with you, the financial mindset, because I just think like, and it is difficult, for schools, because then the remits to whatever. But I'd some of the grades that I got, I've not really used any of the stuff. And I think sometimes, early doors in school, you kind of like, with the way you're wired, you pull to some subjects more than other. But what you're always going to have to deal with money at some points. You're always going to have to understand what your relationship to money is and what and the mind stuff. Everyone, like, everything you experience in life, you experience it with the filter of your own mind. So it makes sense to understand it.
And the mindset and the money is absolutely massive, because I think we're almost educated, and that's probably the wrong word, into saving and not spending, or either having a bad relationship with spending and spending on emotion, which leads to negativity. So you almost feel then through constant spending, I feel bad because I spend, and spending should actually make you happy, and you should spend on the right things.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier about the 20/80, and we talk about freedom, and financial freedom probably should be the ability to do what you want, when you want, and remove all of this fear of ever running out of money. Not having more and more and more, just never running out of money for what you want to do in life. Because we'll all have different aspects of things that we enjoy, be it going to football, going to races, going to the opera, whatever it may be. So everyone's idea of happiness will be totally different, even a person of the same age and the same job. So until you find what you like, and you put your spending to it, and you work that out, to a degree, I think it's going to be difficult to match your happiness, because you're probably chasing jobs for the sake of higher salaries or wages, maybe not being happy, stressed, long hours, and it's cyclical. Where if you come back and work out what makes you happy and know those numbers, and just work to never run out of that money, your life is happiness.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's just having that self-awareness and ability just to take yourself out of off the hamster wheel for a little bit and just ask yourself the deeper questions, really. And because I do agree, sometimes it's like we're conditioned a little bit. Just a sense of advertising around us. Sometimes you'll be okay when you get this. You'll be. It's very subtle, and it's just like. Yeah, like it's a difference. Like, for instance, isn't it? Like someone who buys like a really expensive car because cars mean something to them. They really love the feel, just the smell. It might have been like my granddad used to like spend hours with the car, and I used to like wash his car, rather than just someone going like, oh, how am I going to look driving this car? And it's
And that's
it all
different,
depends
isn't
what yeah, that's the difference. So it's like same with anything in life. It depends what your relationship to is with it, you know. And like you say, it's like finding those things, you know. Like someone else might be looking at some cars, oh, cars do nothing for me, but this other thing, there's someone who loves cars goes, I can't. Why are you spending money on that? Because it just pulls me in a way that it doesn't for you, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think people do it for the wrong reason, and that kind of comes back to what you said at the very beginning about the anticlimax. Do you know what I mean? When you kind of signed for Man United, and Stephen Bartlett talks about it when he sold, wasn't it, Social Chain or whatever, for X amount, and he had that money in the bank. It was the most anticlimactic time in his life.
Yeah, I'm sure it's same. I think
He lost his meaning.
You hear it across the board. I think someone I was working with recently said like he'd heard Sam Warburton say like, oh, when he got the Lions cap and captain, it's like an anti-climax because it's all what it's life goes on, isn't it? We put like so much like focus on this one moment.
Yeah.
And I think I spoke to like a guy in America who works with, you know, the mind side of things, and he says guaranteed after, you know, like he has golfers ringing him up after they won like major trophies. A few days later, just empty. And I feel like it's not saying like it's more like knowing what that's going to bring you, what it can't. It's like it's not pursuing those things. It's all about like an inward game first, and then explore. You're not going to lose your drive. Like it's like you're driven in ways. I don't know what it is. Is it pulled? You know, like your pull's different to mine. Like, and it's just being attentive to that. Really, I think.
As you said earlier on, or Gareth said about social media, that person that wins a major is not going to come out 3 days later going, "I'm really unhappy because I've just won $2 million. I'm set for life. I'm on every television program going to, but I'm unhappy," because there'll be loads of people there go, "Are you unhappy about you? Your life is set," but they don't see the inside workings of that human.
Yeah, I think that's true across the board. It's like don't take anything at face value. I always say like I think people naturally like they'll see pictures of people and your mind fills in the blanks about like you know, you imagine them at home and like never argue. People, you know, sometimes my wife's like this, and she's like, oh, you know, I bet other people aren't. This doesn't happen for other people. You'd be surprised, like you know, but people don't want to be honest a lot of the time.
And social media is huge for that, and I have a love-hate relationship with it, you know. But we're going to have a guest on soon to talk about actually social media and actually being an influencer to that level. But I think that has a huge effect on people because you get a snapshot.
Yeah.
You know, you might get a lovely picture of them stood around the Christmas tree with all the family. But actually getting that picture was probably quite stressful, you know, with all the kids. And actually, just before that, they've had a huge domestic and argument. And it's kind of like, but for that very second of that snapshot, it's the perfect family.
I think sometimes, you know, I know you guys are on LinkedIn, and I'm LinkedIn with you. I think you see it on LinkedIn sometimes when someone just posts something honest and goes, "Yeah, it's been a start of the year and blah blah." You know, not like a just being honest, not like a victim, you know, but just more just like and like you see like people like, and then there's loads of comments, isn't there?
And they have the biggest traction, don't they? If you see those, the one when you give the kind of the honesty thing.
I mean,
people are like, it is that breath of, oh, it's not just me.
and it's more difficult, like, when to talk about honestly when you're in the middle of it. I know there's a few podcasts about, like, I think there's one like How to Fail, where people are talking about their failures, but they're talking about their failures after the fact. So it's easy to look back and go,
Oh, yeah,
oh
exactly.
yeah, this was all got me all to where I was now. But like
Some
sometimes
of those failures gone, I intended to sell my company for 20 million and I've only made 15. I'm really...
But it's weird. It's like, sometimes that's what I say. Sometimes being your own guide, like, it's handy having like people you can bounce ideas off. But sometimes like people are you'll ask someone, they're like, how did you get to where they are? And they'll paint this like linear story, and a lot of it's like, what if you hadn't bumped into that person? No, don't get me wrong. I think you have to keep leaning in. You got to keep shifting the needle, and you more put yourself out there. Opportunities are going to find you. But it's like some stuff happens with me. I'm like. And you can turn around and go, yeah, I did that all by myself. And like, if I hadn't bumped into that person at that moment, like you hear it time and time again, and it's synchronicities in life. Sometimes it's like something happens, but I think the more you kind of like, I don't know what it is. The more you kind of coming from a place where your energy, and you're just like, you're not like looking through lenses of like limitations and stuff.
Yeah.
I think people. It's like sticking, like I think you mentioned off camera earlier. It's like it was like sticking your head above the parapet, and it's not easy to do. But I think, you have to. It's like law of karma. Like people talk about karma as like, oh well, karma, what that person says is going to come back to them. But it's like, karma is about yourself. It's about what action you're taking, and you become the sum of your actions. So like, knowing every action you take is like, it could feel small, and it's like, but it's like shifting the needle. And I think we're quick to want the big moments, but it's just like those everyday moments is like, then they're not rock and roll all the time.
No, and that's it. And we talk about micro actions all the time. It's the micro actions which make the big actions, don't they?
Yeah, it's like that compound thing, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah, it's like, but I think I think we live in a culture where we want everything now quickly, and
it's fast.
And I'm guilty. I set up a business. I thought, right, straight away, I just like, I'm passionate about what I do, but then it's like, you're gonna have days like, I'll have a week where it's quieter, and I'm like, yeah, it's easy when you have like loads of clients in a week. It's like, though, that's the test. That's the test of how much that business really means to you, because like those days, like, and you have everyone, like when I set up my company, like this mind thing is like, part of you goes, oh, what gives you the right to do it? This, but it's like, for me, it's like, it was a whole body yes. It's like, sometimes I was like, I listened to a guy who does it similar to what I do in America, and it was like, man, I could be. It wasn't like, oh, I wonder if I could talk like that. I was like, he's saying stuff that are in my head, and it was like, I felt it, and then I was like, I don't ignore those moments of life. Now I know at certain moments of life, you might have to go rationalize and go, I know in the short term I've got different considerations, but like some people will palm stuff away, and then they'll go at the end of life, I wish I'd followed my gut, and wish I hadn't worried so much. But it's like, the hindsight is like, you've got the benefit of knowing how it went. So people will paint different paths and go, if only just this had happened, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you've still been you, and you could have been knocked over by a bus on that other path. You are where you are. Like, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. We'll do our quick fire round now. So 3 questions. Yeah. Well, actually, the first one's a bit of a double header, really.
Favourite club.
Yeah. You can do that one after. So what was the best and the worst advice you received around money growing up?
Best advice. I don't think I had. When I was young, I don't think I've received much advice at all, which is what we were alluding to.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't have any advice in school. I probably didn't really discuss with my parents. I think a little bit when I was. He didn't, and even when I wasn't on the big bucks when I was playing for Man U, but he didn't have any direction in that regard as well. So
you're just, as you say, regardless of income levels, there was nobody there to kind of sit you down and give you a kind of an educational side of money.
No, nothing. I think same with the mind stuff. I'm not sure. I even know you don't know how much does it take boxing, but
yeah, exactly.
We had a dietitian and a doctor to go about what not to buy stuff off the counter in the chemist, like with failing drugs tests and stuff. But this is 20 years ago. But I thought like with the mind thing, it wasn't really explored. But I think it is a little bit more now. But I think the mind's misunderstood in a lot of, and I think it's easy to say with it should be taught in school and stuff, but it needs people who you can only. I think with it's similar with the mind and like what you do is like it has to come from experience a little bit more rather than just teaching it off like a curriculum.
Yeah, 100%. And we've had this conversation, digress slightly, is that they are looking at bringing some sort of money management supposedly into the schools.
Yeah.
And I've seen the paper about it. And one of the concerning things in there, the governing body they're working with in financial services do it, was disbanded 8 years ago.
Ah, right, okay.
And that's all they talk about is this governing body within the paper. And this is a recent paper.
Yeah.
So they're talking about how they're using the guidance of this governing body who don't even exist anymore.
Ah, right, okay.
And the teachers are going to teach this. I've no offense to teachers and things like that, but I think when it comes to money management and mindset and stuff like that, it's got to come from the heart and it's got to come from experience and actually knowing how it works.
Yeah, I think so. Like, like in my space now, I think with the coaching side, the type of coaching I do, you have to have gone to the level of depth to be able to be the coach. So when they're talking about stuff, you're like, yeah, I've got that. This is what's happening or whatever. But I think with something like therapy or something, I think it's a little bit different. You don't have to have experienced all those things, I think, because you're usually dealing with more severe stuff, and you probably need to be in a place where you can. But I think no substitute for experience. I think it's same with me. Like, there's a few certificates and stuff, but I'm not coming from an academic thing. It's like probably my greatest understandings come from my own experiences, but knowing that not everyone has that same experience, and probably a lot through the books and podcasts. To be honest with you, I think there's people make excuses nowadays, but there's a lot of distractions out there with technology and stuff. But if you want to teach yourself something, I think it's the appetite that's maybe lacking sometimes. There's all these podcasts out there. There's all great books and stuff. It's just like, and not everyone's I'm wired that way that I read books just because I've got a genuine interest rather than me reading because someone said I should read. There's always that difference if it comes from a deeper place in you.
100%. Who do you look up to? Who inspires you?
Who inspires me? No one. I'll tell you the first name that comes out, and probably like completely random. It's just someone like Hugh Jackman. I don't know if you ever heard him being interviewed. He's very, very. I've heard so many stories about how well he is on set, and he's been with his wife for very long, and his approach to life. He's untouched a lot, and he's just you have a feel. I mean, there's a few more, but that's probably the first name randomly that came.
Do you know what? I'm a massive fan of his because he comes across as so genuine and honest, and the stuff you read about him on set about how, I guess, giving he is, and he just seems like a normal guy. I think he said like he doesn't want anyone to have a bad experience on his set, so he'll take the time. And I think that's probably just resonates with me, and as well as like I listened to a song there's a song he sings in The Greatest Showman. I love that film.
Yeah, so it's I can't remember the name of it now, but it's like about coming back home. And to be honest, it's one song I put on every morning, and it opens my heart, and the
energy in those songs is brilliant.
There's an amazing video of him on YouTube. So basically, they were doing like
the one of the green light.
Have you seen it? Where he had
his nose is bleeding.
So he told him not to. Have you seen it? They told him not to sing. So he's got someone else singing it. So he's just stood there, and I think there's like Hollywood buyers or whatever, isn't it?
Yeah, so it was the Green Light Show, whereby they were pitching the script of The Greatest Showman, which had been in the process for 7 years, and they were pitching this to Hollywood to say, "Do we going to get the green light on it?" And he had got skin cancer in his nose and just had an operation. He was told he couldn't sing, so he's kind of stood there, and the guy who's an actor himself was actually doing his
Yeah.
role, wasn't he, of singing the main
It's a
song. I
song.
think,
Yeah,
isn't
it's a
it?
song that I can't. The name of it's gone, but it's a
From
song
now on,
that,
isn't it?
But yeah, from now on. So it's like the actor singing it, and you can tell that he loses himself in the moment, and it's a heart thing. You can just tell, and the energy in the room when he starts singing is. It's
There's a few
unbelievable,
on
isn't it?
that one, isn't there, as well, of him in with that one with other people singing and stuff like that. You can just see the energy in the room.
Yeah, and their love for it, because I think there's one, "This Is Me," which is a big story for people who feel a little bit different,
Yes.
and the lady's singing it, and he's nearly crying, and it's an exchange where he just holds a hand,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know, just gets me.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So, what's your superpower? As in, what are you like? What do you feel you're really good at, ridiculously good at?
I'm probably wired to coach, to be honest. Like in terms of like, it's weird how you can look at things differently. I used to think like, quite introverted, quite sensitive, and I always think, oh God, I wish I was a bit more extroverted. I wish I was not as sensitive, and probably at moments, that makes it harder in the football environment. But then it probably makes me, I probably spent a lot of my younger years talking less, just looking at people and listening to the words people say. So probably it serves me well here. So be careful for what you wish for sometimes, isn't it? Because you want to be different, and then suddenly those same qualities that you've like dismissed, then suddenly they come into their own in a different part of your life.
So what is next for you? What's the journey hold?
Yeah, it's weird for me. I mean, last year I kind of set up the coaching, and it was twofold. I wanted to, I didn't want to dive in too deep too quick, just in case I was like, oh shit, I don't enjoy it. I'm not. I thought I was more wired to it than I am. And two, just to give time just to see the benefit that clients have had. And yeah, the feedback's been pretty positive so far. So it's just building that up really to be of service, and to be honest, never lose sight of what's important to me. It's not automatically to scale the business as high as it can get. I like working one-to-one with people mainly. So I don't want to start like going away from what I love. But yeah, I'm kind of like in it for the long haul, really. Yeah.
Superb. We could have spoken all day.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I don't like it quick, because I just like, I love just...
Yeah, no, thank you. We appreciate that. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I really appreciate
really
it.
enjoyable. I didn't think I'd enjoy speaking to an ex-Man United footballer. But you know what? It has been enjoyable. Whatever, it can be, rowing something. It can be lifting a new weight. So it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
It's that experience of increasing and getting to something, and maybe not even trying to achieve that, but just hitting it or something. I think there just has to be something there to do it, rather than just go, I'll buy an Amazon. Done. It's done.
I mean, people say, more, you can just be happy with everyday things. There's an argument with that, but you are pulled in certain ways as well. So it's like, I mean, I can be happy in most environments now, but I know I'm pulled in certain ways, and it's listening to that. Yeah. To that pull, really. I mean, that's what I'm doing now. Is like probably put it off, and I've always been probably quite, probably similar to you guys. Like I've always been quite curious, and I always look at things. I'm like, if it really interests me, I'm like, why not me? Just have a go at it. With being realistic, because you might have someone who goes like, oh, why not me to have a go at it, and they're completely not equipped to do it, and they're fooling, that's reality, isn't it? But if you know how you're wired, and you know what you're drawn towards, and there's a difference between, like I say, people I work with, they say like lean into your edges, as opposed to someone who's like jumping head first into something that they're not really engaged by, and they're doing all of this up. This is gold. It's brilliant. It's all of this stuff. Yeah, people want to hear that. Well, yeah, but one of my mates, right? He's a doctor, earns a lot of money. I mean, I'm not sure if I don't know if he'd watch this, but he's doing it. He wants to be an engineer, right? But his mum and dad were doctors, so he kind of just, I'll do what mum and dad did. So he says, like when patients come in, the engineering side of him just wants to work out what's wrong, but he doesn't
Yeah,
He doesn't that seeing people. He's more just right. Come in, diagnose the problem. I'm not in a cult, but it's just that's why he's.
Cash isn't there. He has the money, not interested.
But that's fine if you make peace with that, isn't it? But it's more people are like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and you know yourself, I think.
But it's all the inner stuff there, and this is like I said. We chatted to her earlier as well, and all the same sort of stuff came up. As as much as she wants equality, it's the fighting all the time with spinning the business plate, but she wants everything revolves around her sport and her happiness and all that, and that keeps her sane in there. And by keeping sane in there, she's very productive in work, and she's very healthy, but people don't have that balance. And so maybe they do post all of this shit, because when you couldn't go anywhere, just going out around your local area was in itself wow. Whereas beforehand, people didn't give a shit about what it was just like work, play, money, money. And
the funny thing though about lockdown is, like a mate of mine said, it makes you realise how boring your life is normally when nothing changes. My mate literally, remember Kelly, he literally said, lockdown didn't make a difference for me. I didn't really go anywhere anyway.
It was probably good for me as well, because I realised none of the clients I come across are going to be as challenging as my two young boys. It was like, I can handle them.
Yeah.
Don't we know that?
If I've got a client like that, then I'll bow out gracefully.
Brutal.